Hi Year 9, it's Mr. Byrne here, and I'm going to be taking you through your next lesson in the Norman Conquest. Today's lesson title is Who Was Better Prepared for the Battle of Hastings in 1066? So can you pause the video here and write that title for me, please? Right, to get you started, what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to be thinking about these two men, William, Duke of Normandy, and Harold Godwinson. And what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to pause the video and write down 5 key things you have learned about these two men. Okay then, that's brilliant. What I'd like you to do now then is I want you to be thinking about this objectively. And what I mean by that, Year 9, is we've got to pretend we don't know what's going to happen in 1066. It's very famous, and I know most of you probably know who wins the Battle of Hastings, but we've got to make our judgment today based on the evidence of before 1066. Because back in 1066, both these men thought they were going to win, and nobody knew who was going to be the winner. Okay, so as we're going through today's lesson, I just want you to think about that. Right, what you need to know about William and Harold Godwinson, this is not the first time they have met. They have a very troubled past together. And William of Normandy expected the throne to pass to him and not Harold Godwinson. So William had no expectation that he was going to be surpassed by Godwinson in taking the throne. So he's quite cross when Godwinson does this. And William claimed that he was promised the throne by Edward the Confessor in 1051 during a dispute with the Godwin family. So William believes that he has already had an opportunity to protect England and Edward from the Godwinsons. So why should the Godwinsons take over when they've been previously against England? So William's quite outraged that the Godwin family will even try and become the king or queen. And what's really important here is that William also said that Harold had sworn a sacred oath of allegiance to him and should not have taken the throne because of that oath. What an oath of allegiance or fealty is like a promise made in front of God that you will do whatever you've promised to do. So, for example, William said that Godwinson had promised to support his candidacy to be the future King of England. However, Godwinson then goes back on that promise and takes the throne when Edward dies. So obviously, William feels outraged that Godwinson's broken not only his promise to him, but broken his promise in front of God. And Harold actually swore this oath of fealty, so this promise in front of God, around in France, in front of Norman nobles. So there are people there that can testify that this promise actually happened. But Harold Godwinson never actually denied making the promise. He never said, I didn't promise anything. What he did say is that he only swore an oath of fealty to William personally. So he said, I will support you if you have any troubles, but I'm not promising to support you to be the future King of England. And Godwinson actually said that he'd been forced to swear this oath because back in the 1050s, he'd been shipwrecked and he landed in Normandy and was being held prisoner and being threatened by William. So Godwinson's argument is, I was so scared for my life that I had to make this false promise to escape. So Godwinson says, being as though he was forced to make the promise, he cannot be held accountable for that promise. So there's a major disagreement or a major misinterpretation of the past here. So obviously, William and Godwinson have got previous and are not very happy. Based on that information, then, what we need to do as historians is make some judgment on sources. So what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to look at source A here. And source A is Harold Godwinson swearing an oath of fealty to William of Normandy. So I'd like you to pause the video here, please, and have a go at these 4 questions and see what you can come up with. Okay, that should give you enough time to have a look at that then. So let's try and pick this apart together and see if you came up with the same things that I did. So first of all, we can see this. It's called a sacred relic. And what you would normally do is it's like putting your hand on a Bible. If you put your hand on an item that has been blessed by the church or a monk or a priest or an archbishop, you're making a promise in front of God. And back in the 1050s, any promise made in front of God was binding. You never went back on a promise you made in front of God. So we can actually see that it looks like Harold Godwinson, who's this man here, is making a promise. And we can suggest that he's making a promise to William because he's looking directly at him. And we can also see there are people here in the background. So they are our witnesses. We have a load of French men in the background who said this definitely happened. However, we can also say their testimony might be skewed towards William because they're all French. They all prefer William. So they might not be perfectly honest about. And we can also see that both this man, so William here, Duke of Normandy, and Godwinson, we could say they don't trust each other. And we know that for one key reason: they are both holding a sword. So that shows that there's a bit of turbulence and disagreement. Because obviously you don't make an agreement with somebody whilst holding your sword. It shows that kind of fear that Godwinson was talking about. So there's a lot to unpick this source when we think about it. Okay? Right, what I'd like you to do now, you will have been given a worksheet by your history teacher, and it will be attached on Teams or the email. And it will start with the preparation of Godwinson and William, Duke of Normandy. And what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to read and highlight how William and Godwinson prepared for the Battle of Hastings in different ways. And what I'd like you to do is make notes around the side of the sheet if it helps you, like we do in class, whether it was a good or bad idea, their preparation plans. So that's task 1. And task 2, I'd like you to explain in one paragraph who you think was more prepared for the Battle of Hastings in 1066. And you need to make sure you use clear examples of why one person's preparation was better than the others. So if you're going to say Godwinson was better prepared, you need to justify with reasons and examples why he was more prepared than William. So if you'd like to pause the video here, have a go at looking at this sheet and answering these 2 questions for me. Okay, then year 9, sorry. The next thing we need to have a look at is the armies, because when you're preparing to go into a battle, the main thing you need is an army. So year 9, we're going to have a look at the preparation of both the Anglo-Saxon army and the Norman army. So the first army we're going to have a look at is the Anglo-Saxon army. And as I talk and the information comes up on screen, please can you take some notes about the different types of army. You may want to split your page in half here and do Harold Godwinson on one side and William, Duke of Normandy on the other side. So, in Harold Godwinson's army, they used javelins, long axes, and swords. And the housecarls were trained to wield an axe with such force that a well-directed blow could decapitate a horse. And what that means is they could chop a horse's head off with their weapon. What that means, if you're fighting somebody in battle who carries it or who is carried by a horse, you could chop the horse's head off, they fall off, and you can kill them. And don't forget, housecarls were Harold's professional soldiers. And don't forget, Harold in his army also had the Fjord, and they were like your farmer soldiers or your unprofessional soldiers. They normally had round shields that were hide covered and had a central metal base. And so those circular shapes could be used to protect you in battle. And the housecarls would form a shield wall. That is holding a shield in front of you next to your partner, and then someone would hold one above your head, and you make a wall of shields to protect yourself. And many times the housecarls would practice making a gap in the wall for an axeman to step forward and kill an opponent, then they would close the wall back up again to protect him. So very, very well trained is Godwinson's army. They also wore leather armor, and it would have chainmail attached and metal plates sewn into the leather. And they would have a conical, which is like a circular based helmet, with a nose piece. And this was quite similar to the Norman armor. And they were elitely skilled. They were good at shield walls. They had long axes, so they could kill opponents from distances. And they were very well disciplined. They did what they were told, and they could fight for a long time. And the last thing you need to know about Godwinson's army, his housecarls, so his professional soldiers, were the elite foot soldiers of Europe. They would fight to the death to defend their king. So these are fearsome warriors you're going up against here if you're a Norman conquest man here. So I'd like to pause the video just in case you didn't get any notes and just add them in for me. Okay then, so we've looked at the Anglo-Saxon army. We're now going to take a look at the Norman army. So this is William's army. And I'd like you to make notes and start thinking about who's prepared their armies better. So the first thing you need to know about the Norman army is they had a gonfanon. And a gonfanon is a battle pennant used for signalling manoeuvres. And all that means is they had like a signal flag. They would put different flags up the flagpole, and they would give secret instructions on the flag, whatever the picture showed. So what one flag would mean one attack, another flag would mean another attack. And this was good because your opponent couldn't hear what you were planning to do. So it was like a secret way of communicating with your army. He also had lances, javelins, swords, and a new invention called the crossbow. The crossbow was a really clever piece of technology because it's not like a normal bow and arrow. A crossbow is like a mechanical one. So it would have a lever and a button that you could push. And when you push that button, it would fire the arrow for you. This was really important because anybody could fire a crossbow because the machine work in the crossbow does the hard work. So any soldier in the army could have one. And one key feature of the Norman army was horses. The Normans specially bred horses to be strong enough to carry an armoured knight, and they were trained for battle. And William thought they were so important that he brought his war horses across the channel. So he brought his horses with them because they were that important. And again, the Normans had chainmail. They had conical helmets, so that circular helmet. So they were covered in rings of mail or chains just to keep them protected from further attacks. And one thing the Normans did that was very, very clever, they had super saddles, stirrups, and spurs. This is basically the sitting position item that you would place upon a horse, and then a knight could sit upon it. This was really good because the knight would be so encapsulated and he would be so tied into the horse that he could free his arms because his legs would be attached and his body would be securely fastened to the horse. So the Norman knight could hold a shield in one arm and a sword in the other while the horse was riding. And this made it easier to kill his opponents. And finally, these again were elitely skilled soldiers. They'd had years of training on horseback and they trained in special maneuvers like fake retreats. So these have come up with a range of tactics in case they need to try and trick or fight their opponents in different ways. So if you'd like to pause the video here and take any notes just in case you missed anything as I was talking. And the last task that I would like you to do then, Year 9. I would like you to imagine you're the editor of a newspaper in 1066. I would like you to create a front page and you need to explain what both leaders are doing to prepare for the battle. You are also going to give an idea of who you think is going to win based on how they prepared. And you can draw a picture next to the text if you wish to help with the storytelling. Please don't forget, you cannot pretend like you know the answer. So you can only base your information off the preparation because back in 1066, nobody knew who was going to win the battle. And what I'd like you to do, once you've done that, please can you submit your work on the Turnitin feature on Teams, or if you'd like to take a photograph and email it to your teachers, so that's either myself, Mr. Byrne, or Mr. Solway or Mr. Bentley, and we'll have a look at your information. Thank you very much, Year 9. Stay safe.